It started like any other evening, or so I thought. I had expected my wife to come home after work, maybe relax, maybe share a quiet dinner with me. But hours passed and there was no sign of her. My calls went unanswered. Texts were ignored. By midnight, a gnawing sense of unease had settled in my chest, and I realized that something was very wrong. I waited, pacing the living room, trying to rationalize her absence. Perhaps she had been delayed, maybe stuck in traffic, or a friend had needed her support. I wanted to believe that the simplest explanation was true, that my fear was unfounded. But as the hours turned into morning, the anxiety grew into a cold certainty. She had not come home because she didn't want to. The next day, my phone buzzed with a single message from her. I stared at it, heart pounding, as I read the words, "Don't wait up, I'm not coming home. See you when it's convenient." That was it. Short, dismissive, and cruel. No explanation, no apology, no attempt to soften the blow. The reality was undeniable. My wife had abandoned our home, our life, and our vows without so much as a second thought. The betrayal cut deeper than I could describe. It wasn't just her absence. It was the audacity, the carelessness, the lack of respect for everything we had built together. My first instinct was anger. I wanted to confront her, yell, demand answers, but I realized quickly that anger would give her power. If I reacted impulsively, she would win again, feeding on my frustration and pain. I needed strategy, patience, and clarity. I began gathering evidence, texts, emails, phone records, even subtle social media activity painted a clear picture. Her actions weren't accidental. She had planned this absence, orchestrated it, and made sure I knew I was powerless while she carried on with her own life. It wasn't just infidelity, it was manipulation, a test of boundaries, and a show of dominance. That evening, I made a decision. I didn't call her. I didn't beg. I didn't wait by the door. Instead, I started taking back control of my life. I changed locks, secured accounts, and began arranging finances so that she could not manipulate resources or create additional chaos. Every action was deliberate, calm, and strategic. I wasn't reacting emotionally, I was planning, and that difference made all the difference. Within a few days, I consulted a lawyer. Divorce proceedings were initiated quietly but firmly. Custody arrangements were carefully considered, finances were protected, and boundaries were clearly established. I didn't need to scream or humiliate her publicly. The law and my careful preparation would ensure fairness and consequences. She eventually reached out, probably expecting panic, pleading, or confusion. Instead, she was met with calm. My responses were measured, my tone steady, my resolve unshakable. I had no intention of allowing her to manipulate me further. The woman who had abandoned our home, flaunted her freedom, and disregarded my emotions now faced the consequences of her recklessness. Over the following weeks, I continued documenting her actions, ensuring that every lie, every manipulation, and every betrayal was accounted for. I wanted to make sure that if she tried to spin the narrative, the truth would always be clear. And it was. Months later, the divorce was finalized. She had assumed that her disappearance, her message, and her disregard would grant her power, but in reality, it had accelerated her downfall. Her actions had exposed her lack of responsibility, her arrogance, and her willingness to destroy what we had built. Meanwhile, I emerged with dignity intact, control restored, and a life that no longer depended on someone who had shown such reckless betrayal. Reflecting on that period, I understood the lessons painfully but clearly. Betrayal is devastating, but impulsive reactions only empower the betrayer. Strategy, patience, and deliberate action ensure that the consequences of manipulation fall squarely where they belong. Her text, meant to wound, had inadvertently set the stage for her ultimate downfall. By abandoning our life, she gave me the clarity, space, and justification to reclaim everything she had tried to take from me. The result was quiet, precise, and absolute. In the end, the real revenge was not humiliation or confrontation. It was control, dignity, and action. She had left, believing she could manipulate the narrative and dominate my emotions. Instead, she was met with strategy, calm resolve, and the inevitability of justice. And I walked forward into a life that was no longer defined by her deceit, but by my choices, my strength, and my unshakable commitment to protect what mattered most.